us of the greatest gift this world has ever seen, has ever known. Thank you for your presence with us today. Amen. Amen. Thank you, church. You may be seated. Welcome to Connect Church on this Boxing Day. Hey, how good are Christmas carols, right? They're like that perfect, the gauntlet in the velvet glove. They pack a punch. They are truth bombs wrapped inside of these catchy melodies. And while our family was away on holidays in Mackay, we got to go. My brother was performing with a choir. He's a musician, and so he was part of the orchestra, and they were part of a local choral choir group. And I was amazed, because this is just a secular group wanting to put on a production and a performance for Christmas. But the selection of songs, 90% of them were Christmas and Christian carols. And that day, I felt like I was in church. The profoundness of the message that was being preached to people in that place. The place was packed from wall to wall, not a spare seat. And there were people that were getting to experience and to be a part of the gospel message that likely would never otherwise go into church. And friends, it just reminds me of the beautiful gift that is Jesus Christ. That he comes to those that haven't asked for it but doesn't force himself upon them. That he comes and is unassuming in so many ways. And as we unpack the story of Christmas, maybe you felt looked over. Maybe you felt like your packaging isn't quite all done up in the right way. Maybe you felt like your situation and scenario isn't the making of someone that can do something with their life. But the story that Jesus tells in his very life and coming, in being the gift. We were singing Emmanuel in one of those first songs. God with us, the very gift that God gave us of himself, from himself. That all who want to receive this gift can have it. And it reminds me of gifts. Jesus being the gift. Maybe you've had gifts that have been dressed up and wrapped all fancy. You've got great anticipation, but when you open the present, it's almost like an anticlimax. There's a bit of maybe a letdown. Just the wrapping was extraordinary. Or maybe it was a gift that you've been hoping for so long, but when you finally get it, it's like, oh, that wasn't quite as good. Then there's the gifts that just seem like they're kind of mundane and average, right? You know, like you're like, oh, okay, that's it. But they can turn out to be really practical and helpful. And then on the other side, there's the gifts that maybe are wrapped and they present, or maybe it's something that you didn't necessarily want. But it becomes one of the greatest treasure gifts that you've ever had. Have you ever had gifts like that? Have you had gifts that are a bit strange, a bit odd, a bit out there? I remember one year for Christmas, I got a CD and it was from a guy named Roy Orbison. And I'm seeing young kids looking at me for two reasons. One, they probably don't know what a CD is. And two, you don't know who Roy Orbison is. But that's okay, because when I got it in the 90s, neither did I. I knew some of the songs after I listened to it, but it wasn't necessarily a gift that I valued or treasured, because it wasn't really my style of music, and it just wasn't my vibe. Have you ever had a gift like that? Or there's the gifts that change your life. I remember as a young person, one of the greatest gifts I ever got that changed my life was a push bike. It totally changed the way I did life. I was riding from one end of town to the other end of town. Man, I was on that bike all the time. I was going to see my friends. I'd go to school and back. In fact, it was such a surprise that I didn't know that life was so different with a bike, because I'd just not had one and not experienced one. Have you ever had a gift like that? There's another gift that I've had that changed my life. These have changed my life. I had a friend that was listening to me whinging and complaining about my excuses for not exercising. And he tried to encourage me to just remove the excuses, and I just wanted to stay in my excuses. So what he did is he got a gift for me that I didn't know how good it was until I wore them, and then I was chafe-free. My excuses evaporated. And I started exercising. In fact, now, if I run out of these type of underwear, I'm actually really, really frustrated because I just can't wear anything else. They have literally changed my life. Have you ever had a gift that has changed your life? You can think of something? Well, when we think about the gift that Jesus is a gift that's come and is meant to change our life. And yet so many of us that claim to have this gift don't live life changed. We don't live any differently to how we were before the gift. A gift that changes your life should change your life. And Jesus is the ultimate unassuming gift. His gift, the gift of God with us, to us, for us, to remain with us. And it's a gift given to all, for all time. It's a gift that any can take. It doesn't matter how naughty or nice you've been. Is if you're willing to receive the gift of Jesus Christ, He can be a gift inside of you, and you can be a gift to the world when you allow that gift to change and transform you. This morning, I want to just go through the narrative or the nativity story as told through the book of Matthew. There's two places in the Bible where you can read about the birth of Jesus. And it's in the Gospels, Matthew and Luke. And they pick up different parts of the story that help complement and give you a fuller picture. And I just want to look at Matthew's version of the story today. And I'll just give you the brief version. And as we go, I'm going to highlight some of the scriptures and put them there. But the narrative, if you open up into Matthew 1:1, the first book of the New Testament, it starts with genealogies. Now, it's interesting. Often when we talk to people these days, we don't know where we've come from. Us Aussies are a real mixed bag. And some of us maybe don't want to know where we've come from, don't want to know about the past. But for Jewish people, this was really important. Their lineage and where they tied back to, and it meant something to them. And so through that first part of Genesis, we can see a genealogy list go through, tying in where Jesus fits in the overall picture. And then once we move on from that, we see that Joseph discovers that his fiancée, Mary, is pregnant with child. And this is something of a problem for Joseph because they've not been married yet, they've not been together. And Joseph, being an honorable man, instead of publicly humiliating Mary and publicly divorcing her, decides in himself that he would quietly divorce her and settle the matter so that no one found out and it'd just be something that happened between them. But as he was wondering these things, an angel said, actually, it's going to be okay. And Joseph decided to stay on that journey. And the angel says this to Joseph in verse 20 to 30. Joseph, son of David, don't be afraid. Take to you Mary, your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. It's not from another person. She'll bring forth a son, and you are to call his name Jesus, and he'll save the people from their sin. And it was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, behold, the virgin will be with child and bear a son, and they will call his name Emmanuel, which means God with us. Now, interestingly, this angel comes to Joseph and he breaks this big news. And I'm sure Joseph's head is spinning, going, I don't understand this. How can this be? But then they drop another bomb and they ask Joseph to name the son Jesus. Now, if you read the narrative in big and you pull in the Luke part, you can see Jesus' cousin John, when he's born, his name shouldn't have been John, it should have been Zacharias. But there was this wonder and amazement in which an angel instructs them to give him a name of John. And it was a big deal because of the way things were done then. And today we might think, oh, that's not a big deal. It's not very often a son is named after the father. And to us, we might think that calling a son Jesus could be a big deal, where in fact it's actually reversed. In that time, Jesus was one of the most common names. A name selected for God with us was one of the most common names at that time, and yet it was the name chosen for the greatest gift that God would ever give. It was a gift wrapped up in very plain packaging. A very common name. And in fact, he was from a common place. Whilst Jesus was born in Bethlehem, his parents were from Nazareth, and where he grew up was Nazareth. Another plain place. In fact, so plain was the city he grew up in that later on in his life he was mocked, saying, "No good can come out of Nazareth." Maybe you can relate to some parts of this story feeling a little bit plain. Beyond that, as we have a look into chapter 2, right back at the beginning, we see Jesus being born. Born not in a palace, but in a stable, laid in a feeding trough of animals. And we hear of these wise men coming, traveling from distant lands to come, and they've been expectant of this king to be born. They've been following a sign in the sky. And they come to where they would assume that a king should be born. They come to the palace. And they ask Herod, "Where is this king that we are expectant of?" And interestingly enough, the king and the people in the kingdom aren't all that expectant and aren't all that excited about what's to come. You see, the birth of Jesus and the starting of Jesus was common in so many ways and weird in so many others. And we can only understand some of them when we really dig deep into what is happening there, what was happening at that time, or what that means to us now. It was a very unassuming place that Jesus was born into. It was quite a questionable family situation. And again, that's something that the religious people would throw in Jesus' face later. We're not born outside of wedlock. How dare you speak to us in this way? It was far from a textbook start for the Messiah that was to come to save the world. A child with a common name who grew up in a lowly family. The family business of carpentry wasn't something that was highly esteemed. Today, carpenter's a good trade. They're not people that are despised and looked at lowly. But in the time, it was just such an average and such a how's it going type of trade. And this is where Jesus was raised. And people looked down on him. The son of a carpenter. They despised him with jibes as such. But he was born as a king. The next verse, chapter 2, verse 11. It says, when the wise men come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary and his mother. They had a response. These are people that traveled distant lands to come and to find the expectant newborn king. This king is a baby. Now, I don't know how you react and respond when someone's just had a baby, but I'm assuming it's not by falling down and worshiping them. A common baby in a stable. They fell down and they worshiped because they knew who he was and what the appropriate response should be. And they opened their treasures. These guys brought extravagant treasures. They brought gold, they brought frankincense, and they brought myrrh. Next slide. And I can't help it but think of the sales pitch that they would have had. We bring gold, We bring frankincense, but wait, there's myrrh. But there is more. There's so much myrrh to this story than what we can look at face value. First of all, in all of these weird environments and weird things that are happening at Jesus' birth, this is actually one of the weirdest. Because maybe you think, well, these are weird gifts to give to a baby. And you'd be right. It was no less weird then to give these gifts to a baby. Gold was a gift that was given to a king. Frankincense, a gift given to a priest. We can see the prophetic value in calling forth Jesus as this common, unruly child in a really bizarre situation, giving gifts as a king and a priest, which is who Jesus is for us, our king and our priest. But probably the most bizarre of all of the gifts would have been the myrrh. And you've got to take into account how a mother of a baby would feel being given myrrh. Because myrrh, whilst gold was a gift given to a king, whilst frankincense was a gift given to a prince, myrrh was a gift given to a dead person. Myrrh were the spices that were used to anoint the body of the dead. And here at the birth of Jesus, we have the rise and fall of this king that was given as a gift. The gold, the frankincense, the king and the priest, but also the value and the weight in the burial of what was to come. As it was prophesied by the angel, an arrow will pierce your side, Mary. And you've got to sympathize with her in the wonder of all of these events and all that she was taken in, trying to make sense of it all, giving birth to a baby with no man involved. There's a whole range of things that were just so bizarre in this situation. But there was something very special about this very plain boy in a very average and weird situation. You see, this boy was God himself, the gift of God himself. And he was the firstborn in a new way, so that those that receive the gift of Jesus Christ could also be born again in a new way. Jesus was the firstborn again in a new way, was also the firstborn out of death into life, that we can follow in that path. Jesus went the way before us. I know often we can feel like we're less than, not good enough, that we're despised, that people are looking down on us. And we can see that Jesus himself has experienced pretty well all that we can. And when he took on our sin and shame and sickness on the cross, he bore that and set us free from that. And in this gift of great worth, yet wrapped in such an unassuming package, it gives us the opportunity to respond in three ways. And we can see three major responses that happen. The first one is to be ignorant. How many inns, how many places turned away the king to come? How many places did not make room and were not expectant? When the wise men came into the king's palace, they started the search then to see what was prophesied. They weren't up on it. People were ignorant of the arrival of Jesus. And you've got to wonder how the innkeeper may have felt afterwards, looking back going, I just missed that. Imagine the marketing opportunities. This was the palace room. This was the room that Jesus was born in. But you couldn't exactly sell that off really well in the stable. And it's a response that people had then that people have today. So many people either are ignorant or choose to remain ignorant to the gift that's come to change us. Another response is to perhaps be like King Herod and try to shut it down. Chapter 2, it says in verse 3, when King Herod heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. In fact, Herod was so troubled as you continue to read through chapter 2. He went and murdered countless numbers of children because he had no room to come and bow before a child. But his position was that he was in control and he was Lord of his own life and he wanted control. We see that through the life of Jesus with the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And friends, it's not just people in the Bible, but today there are so many that would choose when they come and are confronted with the gift that is Jesus that would change their life, say, no, I want control of my life. I want to rule on my life. And they will go to every end to try and remove the threat that is the greatest gift that's ever come. The third response that we could give, that we see given by these guys that traveled from distant lands and made a great journey bearing great gifts, is they fell before the King in great worship, in great adoration, bringing their very best gifts before him and worshiping and saying, we submit and surrender under you as Lord. We acknowledge that you are King, that you are priest, and that your death is going to bring about great life. But as people who are called Christians, I wonder how often we might vacillate and we might change between which response we're actually having at the time. And it was just a reminder for me in this season how often I take for granted the greatest gift that is Jesus, and how much his desire is to change and transform the ugly parts of me. But often I'll become ignorant, and sometimes I'll even become pushed back against that gentle leading of Jesus Christ. And I wonder how much we should be changed. You know, I could have received these gifts and left them in the box, or said, oh yeah, thanks, and just put them away. Or I could have just worn them and not been appreciative of them. But they were a gift that changed me, and this is Jesus. Jesus is the greatest gift, and he has come to change us. And you know what? I've identified 3 specific ways that what Jesus has done in coming that has completely changed the way these 3 words can be reflected in our life. And we can actually be a gift to those around us when we see these 3 words transformed in us. The first thing that I believe that Jesus has redeemed and transformed is love. You see, in God sending himself to us, we know that God is love. In God sending Jesus, he didn't just say, I love you this much. He gave us this much love. He gave us of himself the very measure of love. God is love. And it's not love in the way the world loves. You see, the world loves conditionally. The world loves apologetically. The world loves in measure. But God's love is immeasurable, unconditional, and is transformative. And when we actually fully receive the gift that is Jesus, our love changes because we have the person of love inside of us. You see, there's a different nature. We are in our first nature. We're in our original nature. And so the way we react and respond in situations is out of first nature. The way we love without the gift transforming us is limited. But when we fully unpacked the gift of Jesus Christ and fully appreciate and worship him as he deserves and as he is worthy, our love changes. The second way we change is in peace. Jesus says, my peace I give to you, my peace I leave with you. And it's not as the world gives. You can read that in John 14:27. You see, those that receive the gift of Jesus have a different type of peace that goes beyond circumstances. And you can tell someone that has fully received the gift of Jesus because they have peace. And kids, you can be someone that is peaceful in all situations when you allow the gift of Jesus to be the most important thing in your life. Adults, how often do we lose our peace by choice because we're ignorant of the gift of Jesus, or we push away the gift of Jesus? We choose to pursue unforgiveness. We choose to pursue things that don't make for the peace of God that He has given us. And the final thing that I believe that is transformed fully and that should be an outworking in us is joy. And we can read all through Scripture of apostles in crazy situations that are able to respond in an attitude of joy because it's who they are. Joy is something that comes to us and can remain with us. And joy can be a choice. When we have the gift of Jesus Christ living, ruling, and reigning in us and through us, our joy actually transforms the world around us. And joy is evidence of the transformation of Jesus Christ. You know, it doesn't matter whether you've been born in the wrong postcode or to the wrong family or the wrong way of doing things or whatever it is, the wrong occupation, the wrong this, that, or the other. I want you to take hope this morning. I want you to be reminded of the ability to be full of love, of the ability to be full of peace, even if perhaps you've got that annoying auntie over Christmas time. The ability to live in full joy, regardless of any situation. Because since the beginning, man has tried to make their own way. Since the very beginning, man has decided that they wanted to make their way to be God-like. And since the beginning of the creation of man, Jesus has always been the answer. Jesus is always the answer. Many people have claimed that they've encountered this gift. Many people claim that they carry this gift. But the evidence is in whether they're Christ-like. Evidence is if they've allowed the gift to change their life. How does their love look? How does their peace look? How does their joy look? And I don't just ask, how does their love, joy, and peace look? Today I ask, how does my love, how does my peace, how does my joy look? How about you? How does yours look today? The real way to tell is to see the evidence. And friends, we can be the gift of being Christ-like in a world that needs Jesus today as much as it did 2,000 years ago.
As we invite the music team just to come back as well, but over 2,000 years ago, Joseph and Mary, they allowed the birth of Jesus, the gift of Jesus, to dramatically change. Their lives were dramatically changed. Will you allow the gift that each of us have been given, to dramatically change your lives? Will you allow and receive Jesus' love for you? Allow His peace and His joy to come into your lives as well. And you know what? This week as you go, we have 7 days left of 2021. Like, how can you, my prayer is simply that you will receive a new revelation of His love for you, and you will just receive more of His peace and joy, no matter the circumstances or situations around you as well. And even more so, in that we can go into next year, into 2022, to be able to give out of more love and more peace and more joy, despite everything that's going on around us as well. And on that note, let's sing Joy. And we wish you all a very Merry Christmas.